You're listening to the Snob OS podcast, the podcast for Apple snobs. Hey, this is Nika Montfort, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
Yo, this is Terrence Gaines, aka Brother Tech.
And welcome back to the Snob OS show, the show for Apple snobs. We talk all things Apple and then some. Welcome back, everybody. And happy Juneteenth. We'll get into that a little bit later. But first, we definitely want to thank you all for your continued support of our show. You can definitely head on over to patreon.com/snobblescast to get the show live and to get exclusive content and to find out how you can become a snobist patron, which we lovingly call our snobist. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into this week's show. We're going to kick it off with the Lowdown, where we talk all things Apple. So in preparing for the show today, there was a lot of Apple news, chatter, articles about what we saw last week at WWDC. I mean, a lot. And to me, it wasn't anything too useful. It was lots of, oh, look at what this is going to come in. Look at how to do this, how to do that. And personally, I didn't want to get too deep into the weeds in that because, again, what's announced and what's released are two different things. And what was just announced and released was the developer beta. And that can change, things can get pulled, things can get moved around. So I didn't want to get too bogged down into the weeds of what we can expect from iOS 18, iPad OS 18, Mac OS Sequoia, all of the other things that's being launched. I say, let's wait until we get a little bit closer to actual release time to really deep dive into those, because again, things are just launched and I get that people are excited about them and wanted to, talk about it. But again, it's only so much that we could really talk about, especially since most people won't even get to see it on their device or even play with it because, again, on the developer build was released and you have to be, of course, an Apple developer to get access to that. So, plus, who wants to overhype something before you get a chance to really, get into it and be able to, put your hands on it yourself. So we're going to talk about a couple of other things before we, for the Lowdown this week, instead of getting into a lot of the stuff that came out of WWDC last week. So the first thing up is Apple Pay Later. It was just announced about a year ago in iOS 16, but guess what? It is now being discontinued. And it was launched in the US only. And again, Apple Pay Later, think of it, if you don't know, your Affirm or your Klarna, it allowed you to purchase things wherever Apple Pay was accepted, and you were able to do installment plans. The ranges was from like $50 to $1,000, and you got to split the price of it into 4 bite-sized chunks over 6 weeks. Well, it has now been discontinued. Folks who have active installment plans, they'll keep going as they have as their plan dictates. But there won't be any new installment plans through Apple Pay Later. And once you close out whatever installment you're on, that's it. That's a wrap. That's done. You may ask, well, why is this happening? Why didn't they keep it? Well, coming up in iOS 18, Apple is adding some new features that allows you as a user to use other pay later services. I think the one that was most notably mentioned was Affirm. And this is going to come globally. Like I said, Apple Pay Later was only for the US. These new features that are implemented, they're going to be global. So you'll be able to use them globally through other credit type services. And I think it gives, Apple users a bit more flexibility to use more than just Apple Pay Later, especially since Apple was backing this through Goldman Sachs. And I'm thinking they didn't say it, but we already know the relationship between Apple and Goldman Sachs with the Apple Card has soured a bit with Goldman Sachs trying to get out of it. And I think this is one thing they're trying to kind of siphon off and provide other options for, so that they can kind of start to untangle the web that Apple and Goldman Sachs has created as it relates to these financial type services, whether it be the Apple Card or whether it be Apple Pay Later.
Yep, and it seems like Affirm, I don't know if you mentioned this already, but Affirm is if not the version of Apple Pay Later that's going to not necessarily take the place of Apple Pay Later, but Affirm seems like it's going to be the selection of choice that, of course, Apple's not going to push people that way, but Affirm will probably be one of the main benefactors from Apple canceling Apple Pay Later.
Right. And I'm not sure if they're going to extend this to other companies like a Klarna or anything else. But like you said, and I mentioned before, Affirm is the company that Apple specifically outlined. And so based on what was announced for the new Apple Pay features, this is basically a recap. Apple Pay introduces even more flexibility. So it's not Apple Pay Later, it's just Apple Pay. More flexibility choice for users. They can check out online and in app. Users can view and redeem rewards, access installment payments, loan offerings from eligible credit cards and debit cards when making purchases online or in app with iPhone and iPad. These features will be available for any Apple Pay enabled bank or user to integrate into supported markets. So essentially, Apple Pay is getting an upgrade to include Affirm as well as a few other things. So this seems to be, like I said, to me, this seems to be a way for Apple to take a little bit of that financial burden off, because they were basically funding this through Goldman Sachs, and Goldman Sachs does not want to be the backer of the Apple Card. And so I think this is just one way to start to detangle that relationship, that entanglement, so to speak. So I guess between now and likely sometime in the fall, maybe September, there won't be any sort of way you can get an installment plan through Apple. You will have to go directly to these other sites, Affirm, Klarna, and whoever else who offers these services. It won't be provided directly through Apple, and you won't be able to manage it. Anything new in Apple Wallet, only the existing plans.
All right.
Next up, I know a lot of times, I'm sure you, Brother Tech, experience this as well. People need a new laptop. They want a new device. And they're like, I don't know which one to get. What should I get? I don't know. Somebody help me. You're a tech person. You're into stuff. Tell me what I should get. Well, Apple just debuted a new website that is essentially designed to do that. Basically help potential customers find the ideal Mac for them. It's called Help Me Choose. And it basically asks users a few questions and then offers up the suggestions of the Mac that will best meet their needs. It's a series of questions that basically, helps you make that decision on, do I need an Air? Do I need a Pro? Do I need an iMac? Do I need a Mini? Do I need a Mac Studio? What exactly do I need for what I'm trying to do? And the algorithm that Apple has, it suggests, it takes in all those different questions as to what are you going to be doing for? Is it just something for day to day? Is it for just surfing the web? Or are you on the creative side where you're using Photoshop or you're using editing tools, audio, video, or if you need something that can go with you on the go, if you don't have a physical workspace, all those things. How much you want to spend is also included in that. And what other peripherals, like will you need a monitor? Will you need a mouse? Or, all those things are taken in the little algorithm behind the scenes. It does this little boo-bops and bebops, and then it spits you out some suggestions on what you should do, what you should purchase based on the information that you entered into the Help Me Choose websites. It also makes suggestions for memory upgrade, storage, and what will be helpful and useful as you go through the process and what works with your budget. So it's actually out there now. We'll put the link in the show notes. If you are in the market for a new Mac and you don't know which way to turn, which way to go, what to get, what's an M3, what's an M2, what's the RAM, what's to this, what's to that, this will help you in making those decisions.
So I actually clicked through the website. Mm-hmm. And it's not even that complicated. They don't ask you how much RAM do you need, mm-hmm. how much storage space do you need. They more ask questions like, where will you be using this? Will it be docked mm-hmm. at your computer? Docked at your desk, or will you be using this around the house? Yeah. It asks questions like, what are you going to be using this for? Is it going to be video production? Is it going to be coding? Are you mm-hmm. an organizer? Things of that nature. It also asks questions like, let me see. Do you have a budget in mind? Will you be plugging things in like displays, external storage, media equipment like mics and cameras, things of that nature. So it's not a super serious survey. It just asks a couple of questions about what sort of things you do on it, where you're going to be using it, how much money do you have in mind to spend, and then based off of that, it recommends something. So it's not going to get one of the
technical.
Yeah, I want to temper people's ideas of what they're going to be doing.
Yeah.
It's not it's not a 25 question survey, and it's not asking you what specific applications or software you're going to use. It's not going to ask you, how much RAM do you need? How much storage space do you need? Do you need an Intel or M2 or it doesn't ask any of those. It really kind of breaks it down of basic universal questions that most, if not all people can answer prior to getting a list of recommendations. Again, they're just recommendations, but being able to answer a couple of questions, specifically whether you need a desktop or a laptop. I think most people are going towards Apple as far as laptops are concerned, because that's the most popular, but there are some desktops out there, the Mac Mini, the Mac Studio, some of those would fit very well. I have two Mac Minis in our house. And therefore very stationary things. So you may need a stationary computer, but you being a new Apple specific Mac user may not know that Mac has a desktop available. So you may just assume I got to spend money, on a laptop, or I got to invest in a laptop, when that may not be the case. So this website does a good job of basic stuff. Again, it's not technical, it's not heavy. But at the same time, beats asking me, because I get a lot of questions about what kind of Mac should I use. And then they ask all those questions. Now I'm going to say, all right, go to this website.
Yeah. And I think that was the whole intent, to make it simple, easy for the layperson to be able to go and make a determination. Because in most terms, super technical people who know all about the specs, who are all about it, they're not the audience for this type of tool, but the audience is for your everyday person who is like, I need a new device, but I'm not quite sure what I need or what's going to work for me. So if you are in the market, if you know someone who's in the market and you don't know what to look for, and you're like, I don't know who to ask, Apple has solved that problem for you and gives you an automated way of helping you to figure out exactly what you need. Next up, Apple being sued. Is that out of the ordinary? Of course
Yep.
not.
Yep. Lawsuits, 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 lawsuits. So this one is kind of a weird one that I put in here. Um, Man sues Apple over deleted messages sent to prostitutes. So basically what happened was the husband in question had arranged to meet prostitutes via iMessage on his iPhone and did what he tried to do sneakily on the sly, deleted all the incriminating text from his device, believing this would cover up his infidelity. However, his wife opened up iMessage on his iMac and the family shared whatever. I'm not sure about
On the family machine.
share. Okay. So they get these words right on the shared family computer, and he must have been logged into his account, and she was able to go into the deleted messages or recover deleted messages and found all the texts revealing the years worth of messages to prostitutes. Of course, she filed for divorce shortly after his realization, and his response, or his lawyer's response to this, I thought was pretty interesting. He says, "I genuinely thought I was going to have a heart attack. Divorce is an extraordinarily stressful process, and you have children and family dynamics. In my opinion, it's all because Apple told me my messages were deleted when they weren't." Yeah, so that's pretty much it. So basically, I read that to read that it ain't the cheating, it ain't the infidelity, it ain't the dishonesty, it ain't all the lying,
all the lies.
It ain't the covering up of all the dirt, covering up your tracks. Yeah, your
putting your wife's health in danger,
your ethics. Yeah, all that. Put your wife's health in danger. Putting mentally, sexually transmitted infections and disease and murder. Because if you're dealing with prostitutes and you mess around, they ain't necessarily gonna play victim, right? So damn all that though. The real reason why is because Apple was not thinking about my family, and going through divorce is hard, and Apple told me that they deleted the messages. We know if you really trying to be slick with it, you're supposed to delete the messages and then go into the deleted messages folder and delete those. So clearly, again, he wants to blame Apple all he wants to, but bruh, from the cheating, the infidelity, to the covering up, or the so-called covering up your tracks, you failed at every single step. So for you to try to sue Apple is crazy.
Yeah, like you do realize that you deleted them from the device. One thing that's great about Apple is being in the ecosystem and all of your things are synced. Mm-hmm. It's great. Helpful. Move things, to and fro. But when you're trying to do some dirt, you deleted them from the device. You didn't delete them from all of the devices.
And he didn't delete them from his account.
On device. Yep. Right. It's on device, friend. On device. So you can't blame Apple for you not being a good cheater.
Right. That's pretty much what it boils down to. You got caught. Now you're looking for somebody to blame, which is typical for human behavior. Nobody wants to take accountability. Nobody wants to own up to their issues. It's like somebody else to blame. And in this case, he wants to blame Apple because Apple told him, or he assumed, that all his messages were deleted when in fact they were not.
The only thing he succeeded at is putting all of his business and all of his family's business on Front Street, because now everybody knows what you've been doing and how not smart you are. So sucks to be you, bud.
Yep. All right. So the next story I had real quick is another lawsuit against Apple, but this one seems a little bit more serious. Right now, 2 current Apple employees are suing their employer, Apple, of course, alleging gender-based discrimination. The class action lawsuit alleges that Apple violated the California Equal Pay Act and includes 6 other complaints ranging from unlawful business practices to a failure to pay back wages and claims of a hostile work environment for women. So specifically, these 2 women, Justina Long and Amina Salgado, filed the class action lawsuit this week. They argue that Apple isn't paying women the same amount as male employees for, quote, substantially similar work, and that the pay gap is willful and systematic because because of Apple's policies. Apple asks new hires for their pay histories and uses that to determine compensation offers, leading to
Ooh.
lower pay for women, the lawsuit says. When it comes to performance evaluations, Apple is rewarding men for certain behaviors while punishing women for displaying the same characteristics, according to the complaint, which alleges Apple's evaluation setup is, quote, biased against women. These assessments also have a financial impact on Apple employees because company stock, bonuses, and raises are tied to such evaluations. So the article goes on and kind of outlines the two women specific incidents that they kind of, not necessarily strawed or broke the camel's back, but the two instances that are kind of like glaring. For example, Jong, who still works at Apple and has been there for over a decade, was sexually harassed by other Apple employees when she was forced to work beside. Then she was forced to work beside. The lawsuit alleges Jong reportedly asked Apple to be moved away from her harasser, but Apple rejected her request. So Salgado hired a third-party investigator to determine that she was being paid less than men who did substantially similar work. Apple only raised Salgado's pay when presented with the findings of that investigation and has not provided Salgado back pay. So all the years that they wasn't paying her, they declined to pay her the back money once they, quote unquote, admitted to saying, all right, we'll pay you to match, per the private investigator findings. So my question to you is this emblematic of society as it relates to gender-based discrimination as a whole? Or is this something that is specific and systematic to Apple?
So this is systematic across the board. I was just reading before the show an article that someone posted on Twitter talking about this exact same thing, where the pay equality gap has now doubled between men and women. And what stuck out to me in this article is the fact that Apple used previous pay history for new employees to determine their salary. Well, if I was being underpaid at the previous company and that's why I left, then me coming to you and you using the lower salary to determine my pay, of course, there's going to be a discrepancy. Of course, there's going to be inequality because it was already being paid lower at the previous job. So you're basically bringing that mess into this new situation when basically you should pay me the same thing that you pay other people who have similar backgrounds and experience. And that's where the crux of things come into. You and me say we are up for the same job. We have the same type of experience, the same number of years experience, the same type of education, and you're still likely to be paid practically twice as much as I am because of, one, my gender, and two, because it's one of those things where if they're using the comparison of pay from previous
faulty
places,
comparison.
Yes, faulty comparison. It's already when you start to use first of all, you shouldn't be using previous employers' salaries to dictate what you pay me, because that don't have nothing to do with you. That is, again, it's previous, and it's a whole different company, like a whole different industry. So what I was doing over there doesn't have any bearing on what I'm doing over here. What are your pay bands for the level that you're bringing me at? What are your bands based on experience and work history and education? Leave them out of it. They don't belong in this. This is their conversation. This has nothing to do with them. So yeah, it's not something specific to Apple. Apple just happens to be a very rich company.
Right. So let me ask you, it's not emblematic, or it's not, is it atypical? It's not just typical of Apple, but
right.
What I mean, what I would have thought was that Apple, knowing its history, knowing its track record, knowing its previous deeds as it relates to gender equality, as it relates to, racism, all of the what's the word? The activations, we'll call them activations. The activations that Apple has done, it would give you the impression that Apple is bigger than stuff
capitalism.
Like this. Well, I mean, they give you the impression. I'm not saying they do. I'm just saying it gives you the impression, even with Tim Cook at the helm and him being, openly, gay, I guess it would be. Yeah. And all the efforts they do in Pride Month, all the efforts that they do for Black History Month, all those things, you would assume that Apple is quote unquote bigger than that. So my question is, now that we see that they're not, what is your overall opinion? Does this kind of sway your opinion of Apple a little bit more? Or it is what it is? Because like you mentioned, companies are all about capitalism and whatever it takes is going to give them $1. You can't separate Apple from that bunch because they're all kind of the same thing.
And what's the saying? Cash rules everything around me. It's one of those things where if I can get away with this and it helps my bottom line, then obviously I'm not going to be proactive to fix this. What I will do is say, oopsies, I made a mistake. Mm-hmm. Let me fix it, especially when you have the resources to do it. It's that whole ask for forgiveness rather than permission. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where, don't get me wrong, I'm an Apple enthusiast. I love their products. I love how simple they make my life. But at the end of the day, Apple is still $1 trillion company. Mm-hmm. Apple is still ruled by board of directors, stock market, bottom line. How much money are we making? Are we at the top? Are we still number one? And they are going to continue to do those things to ensure that their standing as a company stay the same. Nobody, I don't believe anybody is above reproach when it comes to how you're handling money. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, like I said, cash rules everything around you. And it's all about the money. And no matter how much we want to hold people or companies in esteem, again, they are multi-trillion-dollar companies whose goal is to make money. And if they can make money by underpaying people knowingly, willingly, they're going to continue to do that until someone like these two ladies brings it up and says, pay me. And that's to me the issue around all of it. It's you have to go individually or even in a small class action. You can't trust that these companies are going to do the right thing when it comes to their employees, especially when it comes to money. So it doesn't change my mind on them. It just, informs what I already knew about the 0.5% is that they're going to do whatever they have to do to keep that money in their pocket. So
all right.
Unfortunate, but true. That is going to wrap up the lowdown. We're going to head on over into Second String, where we talk all other tech. Well, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Ticketmaster and how the government was coming after Ticketmaster for being a monopoly. Well, the DOJ, the US, the United States of America, is coming after another tech company. This time they're coming after Adobe. And again, hurrah! Because as an Adobe user, mostly Photoshop and Lightroom, and some video Premiere, getting rid of Adobe when they went to a subscription-based model was horrible. You have to install Creative Cloud, which manages all these software applications, and you have to pay monthly. It's like $60 a month, even for like the student. Because I was like, let me try and dig up some of these old college emails, see if I can do it to get the student. $60 a month. Before, you could just buy Photoshop. You got the CD. Mm-hmm. You pop it in. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm not saying I did it, but I know that some people in the world probably did it where you could, burn you a CD.
Sure.
And some kind of way you could come by the product code to enter it. And then you can have it forever. But then Adobe was like, everybody's going subscription. None of that product code mess. No DVDs, no whatever. You have to do this all online.
Well, I don't even think, to be honest, side note, I don't even believe that Adobe was trying to thwart bootleggers. I just think everybody was going to subscription. When Microsoft moved Word, Excel, PowerPoint to a subscription base, it was it. Yeah. All the other companies was like, bet, this is what we doing. Apple did. Yeah. Of course, Apple did it. Adobe also did a Creative Cloud. I just think they did the math, and instead of selling, I don't know how much Adobe was. It could have been like $2,000, $2,600, something, $2,600 sticks in my head as far as buying Adobe. If I'm legit trying to buy Adobe's suite of
the full suite,
I think it was like $2,600.
But then you could buy the individual pieces if you wanted, if you don't want to buy the whole suite. Yeah.
Adobe did the numbers just like all the other companies and said, well, we can put you on a subscription, and in 2 to 3 years, we'll make double, of what a single purchased piece of software costs, which is why Adobe switching over, or Microsoft rather switching over, is one of the reasons why you can't really buy software anymore, with the exception of
there's not very much physical media left.
Right. With the exception of Apple, I buy Final Cut Pro, and that's like $200, and I'll gladly pay $200 one time versus $5 a month, because $5 a month after a year, I'm already up. I'm already, they've already made their money, and then I got to keep using it.
I got to keep using it. I got to keep paying it.
Yeah. So all that to say, I don't even think it was the thwart bootleggers. It was just like, oh, we can make more money with subscriptions. Flip the switch.
And not only make more money with subscriptions, but with this particular lawsuit, it's when people want to cancel it. So Adobe had all of these hidden fees that makes it hard to cancel a subscription. So it's like, you know what? Like for me, I was like, I don't want to pay this no more. Free me from this. Like I said, I couldn't even delete, even after I canceled the subscription, deleted the applications that I was using, I still couldn't get rid of Creative Cloud, the application. It stayed. I was digging through the rabbit hole trying to find, I'm going into the registry, trying to delete stuff. Ooh, I got it. Nope. Boop, it pops back up. And you couldn't turn it off on, when you boot up, turn off at startup. Nothing worked. It would always pop up. It would always ask me, sign in and buy this again, do that. And I'm like, no, I don't want this. I don't want this in my life. But yeah, so when you get ready to cancel a subscription, Adobe it requires you to go through this prolonged cancellation process. Normally, like if you say you want to, I don't want to subscribe to this anymore, or you discontinue your service, tell us why you don't want to do it. And you say XYZ, XYZ, and then you click it. Are you sure you don't want to come? You sure you want to leave? Click it. If you stay, you can pay 50% less. If I could pay 50% less for leaving, why didn't you offer me that at the beginning? But anyway, it goes through all this process. And then at the end, it hits you with a termination fee.
Oh, man.
That basically says, if you don't pay this fee, you can't cancel your service.
An early termination fee, like I'm paying off my mortgage or something.
Right. Right. They are like, well, if we can't get the money coming in, we're going to get you going out. And so obviously so many people saw this, had this issue, and they begin to complain. They would even call and try and talk or chat with someone who worked at Adobe. And basically they would be like, we don't want to talk to you because you want to leave us. So we're going to end the call. We're going to end the chat. We don't care that you're calling to cancel. No, we're just not going to talk to you. We're just going to hang up. We're just going to hang up. And there's no way, you can't tell me that wasn't a directive that came down and said somebody calls to cancel, disconnect the call.
Oh, that's crazy.
So it's just like, we don't want to talk to you because you want to leave us. So yeah, so it all of this goes on to say that the executives at Adobe were basically doing this targeted to try and keep people from leaving. And you can't do that. You can't just say, I don't want you to leave, so I'm going to make it really, really hard. I mean, it's like during the pandemic, in order for me to cancel my LA Fitness subscription, I had to mail a letter into their California office, wait for them to process it before it was canceled. You couldn't even change your payment of method. They said when you go to cancel it or whatever, or you say, you know what, well, if I just remove the money, the payment, then it can't go through. Nope, won't let you do that. So all that to say is they made it extremely difficult for people to cancel these subscriptions that they are locked into for, a certain amount of time. I think it's like a year at a time if you signed up for that. Because again, if you go like month to month, I'm not even sure if you could do month to month now. When I had it, you could. But if you have a year-long subscription and you cancel it, and I'm sure some people are willing to say, you know what, I'll just eat the cost of what I'm not using for and not even ask for a refund. They're like, no, you're going to eat the cost of what you paid, even though you won't be using it. And we're going to hit you with this termination fee and multiple hurdles to even cancel it. So first off, I'm out of the money I already paid. Second off, I have to still pay this large fee to terminate. And thirdly, you're going to make it as inconvenient as possible
to cancel
for me to cancel this. So yeah. So now the government's gotten in on it, and they're like, okay, we're going to do something about it. So in the actual complaint, they name like I'm trying to see the number of people.
Yeah, the lawsuit also targets Adobe executives Mayander Swahi, Senior Vice President, Digital Go-to-Market and Sales, as well as David Wadhami, the president of the company's digital media business. The complaint says both executives directed, controlled, and had the authority to control or participated in the acts and practices of Adobe. Adobe didn't immediately reply to request for comment. So yeah, they're naming people who, like, this was a directive. This wasn't kind of like some people got together and figured out, because when customer service reps, what I've learned is I think they take a hit anytime you call in to cancel any service, like your internet, your cable, your cell phone, whoever the quote unquote lucky or unlucky customer rep that picks up the phone, they do have to like
try and upsell you or keep you.
Right. Because if they don't, I think that is a ding against them. I'm not sure. Any customer service reps, please call in or send us a message on social media or email. Let us know if I'm right or wrong. This is more than that. This is more than a couple of sales reps getting together.
This is targeted from the exec.
Right. Yeah. These are directives like, do not let these people cancel, which is totally different than some guys getting together and saying, I'm trying to get my bonus. So let me try to figure out how to not cancel it. So that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah. And this is all on the heels of another huge Adobe scandal, for lack of a better word. I think it was maybe last week. People on social media were lighting into Adobe because they came out with these new terms of services, and someone actually read the terms of services and came back and said, basically, these terms of services say that Adobe has access.
We own your data.
We own not only your data, but any assets you create. So say you go in and you edit a movie in Adobe Premiere or whatever their video editing service is. Adobe is saying that they own that. They own your work. They own
They can use it to
train commercials, train their data. They could do anything, whether it be, and this was the kicker, even if it's stored locally on your machine, they still own it. If you store it in their cloud, they own it. And people were pissed. And I think this is another way that the whole subscription thing kind of came back to light, because people were like, let me go and cancel this. Let me get rid of this. And they found that they couldn't. And so all of this goes into play, and Adobe recently announced, I'm looking at this article on The Verge, and said, no. We didn't say that. We didn't say that we were going to own it. And, we're saying that we've changed it now, but it's not really a change because we were going to never do it anyway. Who in their right freaking mind would trust Adobe when it was in black and white in your terms agreement? And now you come back and say, no. We won't use your images or whatever you create to train our data on. We wouldn't do that. That's not what we do. Who would believe you, sir?
Right.
Ma'am, who's going to believe you? And I say all to say is subscription-based services have gotten out of control. Everything doesn't need to be a subscription, but everything is a freaking subscription, and I'm tired. So it'll be interesting to see how both of these things kind of play out, because people were tagging the director of whoever is over like digital content, digital media, and not just, us plebes or regular people, like studio execs and people who head up animation and photography. They were at them on Twitter like,
what's this
mean? What's this mean? And I'm sure it's people that they have relationships with, because these are high up execs as well. And they're like, wait a minute, what is this? You're saying that you own my work now just because I use your software? Isn't that the whole point of you? Isn't this your job? Is to provide me with the software to do my job? And now when I do my job using your software, which is your job to provide me, you're saying that you own my work? Bro. It's like Adobe's like the mafia. It's like, what?
Right.
It's wild. So I don't know who else is using Adobe, but God bless you and good luck. All right, that's going to wrap it up for Second Strength. We are going to head on over into For the Culture, where we talk about culturally relevant things to us as individuals, as people, as society in a whole, whether it be entertainment, sport, or whether it be more serious topics relating to what's going on around us. So again, I mentioned at the top of the show that today is Juneteenth, and it is now a federal holiday. So you'll see folks all over social media and people out celebrating. I was actually supposed to go to an event that some of my friends are going to. I waited too late to buy the tickets, and the event was sold out. But all this to say is I put the link in the show notes that basically talks about the history of Juneteenth. So basically, for those who don't know, we're going to do a little history lesson. Gonna bring you all up to date. Emancipation Proclamation. We all know that was signed to give freedom to the enslaved people of this country. Well, slavery is unfortunately the foundation of this country, and not everybody was happy that these slaves were emancipated. So it took up until June 19th, 1865 for the last of the enslaved people to find out that they were no longer enslaved. And all this happened in the state of Texas, specifically in Galveston, when the last of the enslaved people got word that they weren't slaves anymore. So this is how we get Juneteenth, a play on June and the 19th of which was the day that the last of the slaves, which were in Texas, received the word that they were no longer enslaved, that were emancipated. So this, for a lot of Black people, this is history that is known. And I have to say, there are a lot of Black people who aren't aware as well. But as of June 2021, Juneteenth was conferred as a federal holiday. thanks to Miss Opal Lee, Dr. Opal Lee, who basically fought for, she's 97 now. She basically fought for Juneteenth to become a federal holiday. And probably one of her most extraordinary efforts was she walked from Fort Worth, Texas to DC at 89 years old to petition the federal government to make Juneteenth a holiday. And one of the things, again, Miss Opal is 97. So she's seen a lot. She's been through a lot of the history in this country. As a child, her family was run off their land and it was stolen. And just this year, she was able to return to her home, to her family's home, and regain ownership of that land that was stolen from her family as a child. People think this history is so far back. They think just because they see photos in black and white that the effects of the enslavement of Black people, Jim Crow, they think that all these things were so far beyond, so far in the past that we can't possibly still be suffering the ramifications of that time. When you have this 97-year-old woman who at 89 had to walk from Texas to DC to help to get this a national holiday. And it was just a federal holiday.
And I would argue to say that they don't even believe they don't believe that, oh, this is such a long time ago, like slavery times, 1860 or whatever the case may be. I think people know that this is recent history, Juneteenth being a federal holiday and, the dates, for actual Juneteenth that we started, the Emancipation Proclamation. I think people know the dates of that. I think people use that as an excuse not to address it because people love to just say, why can't we just move on?
Move on.
Right. So their idea, the people who don't believe or protest or want to trick you into thinking that this is ancient history is because they don't want to address it. And you don't want to necessarily, in addition to that, you don't want to feel like you benefited from it when some people did not. So instead of saying all that, saying I'm insecure, I don't want to feel guilty, I don't want my kids to feel guilty, they come up with all these excuses. And one of the excuses is, this was such a long time ago. Can't we just move on? We'll never be able to move on if y'all keep bringing up the past. Right. And of course, as the old saying goes, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. History is the best to learn about your future. You got to learn all the idioms and whatever as it relates to pretending like you can just forget history. Right. And I think that's what they're doing. I think they just want to move on and pretend like this doesn't happen. And now that Juneteenth is a federal holiday, every year around this time, they've got to see the articles. They got to see the Facebook posts. They got to see the Instagram. They got to see the company sharing Happy Juneteenth on social media. They got to see
people get the day off. Federal buildings closed.
Right. Which was surprisingly, like I said last week, I've been into the stock market kind of heavy. And today I was looking at the stock market. I'm like, why isn't it
trading?
Nothing's moving. I'm watching all the different charts and I got my monitor set up with the different stock prices that I'm tracking. I'm like, the price has been the same for like 3 hours now. What's going on? I was like, that's right. Today is Juneteenth. That's right.
Yep. And it inconveniences them, but it's interesting that some people want to put this part of the past behind us, but they also want to be able to cosplay the Civil War and dress up, and they want to keep
the flags,
certain monuments up. They don't want to take monuments down. Right. They don't want to change the names of schools.
And that's my problem. Hypocrisy. Don't don't be hypocritical. Don't
Yeah.
say we need to move on. This is a
Yeah.
painful part of our history. But then
When
at
you
the same
don't,
time want to keep some
the
painful
part that you
parts,
like.
right? Some pain
Yeah.
that parts of history that were
Yeah.
maybe okay with you, but painful to other people. You know,
Right.
the
Right.
hypocrisy is what kills
Yeah.
me. So
Yeah. Yeah. But definitely shout out to all of us who are celebrating today. Definitely shout out to the legend that is Miss Opal Lee as well. And happy Juneteenth, everybody.
yep.
All right. The Hookup, where we talk our tech tip of the week. Brother Tech, take it away.
All right. So here's what we got, right? So everybody knows AirDrop is the ideal way to share pretty much anything via your iPhone, specifically photos. Instead of trying to email them, instead of trying to upload them to some sort of shared Dropbox or OneDrive or whatever the case, just use AirDrop, select the contact, send the photos, right? So here's my hiccup for the week is there are hidden AirDrop settings that may make photos sharing a little bit better, not necessarily faster, but a little bit better. So here's how it works, right? So let's just say you go in and select some photos, and then you actually open the share menu by pressing the little share button. Instead of doing what you normally do, like selecting a contact and actually sharing it, if you hit in some cases, depending on what iOS you have, it may be the three dots. In my case, at the top, it lists the number of photos selected, and then under that, it lists options. If you tap the options button, it'll give you the ability to change some settings for your photos. For instance, if you want to do the most compatible format, like if you want to send JPEGs versus sending Apple specific format, I think it's that HEIC format. You can send them. You can select the most compatible. You can send as a individual photo, or you just want to send it as is, how you select it, or you can actually select a iCloud link. So you can actually share. Apple. Once you select this option, Apple will formulate or corral all the photos into a photo album and share the link instead of the actual photos. So that may actually share a little bit faster. So if you're trying to AirDrop 43 photos, you might want to go in this option and share an iCloud link instead. And then the link will go by faster. That'll give the recipient, the option to select the photos that they actually want to save to their phone or their device. The other one is you can turn off photo data. So you can turn off where the picture was taken. You can turn off.
So you're turning off the metadata.
You turn off the metadata, the time, the date, the location, because you may not want to share all that. You may just want to share the picture, and depending on who you're sharing to, people are nosy. So you can actually turn those options off as well. So I just wanted to highlight those tips when you're sharing photos specifically via AirDrop. You do have some options before you actually send the photos as is.
Cool. And that definitely comes in handy because we are in the summer months. People are out on vacation, socializing, happy hours, kickbacks, all the such. And the first thing people do, send me that picture because they want to post it on social media. So this definitely will make sure that the data around that photo is protected if you would so like it to be. That is going to wrap up this week's show. Brother Tech, where can the people find you?
Yeah, sure. You can find me all over the internet at Brother Tech. That's BROTHATECH.
And you can find me at Tech Savvy Diva everywhere. Again, to connect, to share, to comment, to like this show, you can head on over to snobblewestcast.com and get all of those details. And we are going to wrap up this week's show on this fine Juneteenth of 2024.
Peace.
Bye, everybody.